Hello my crafty friends, welcome to another card making video. Today I thought I would do some messy mixed media. So I took my A4 pad of Daler Rowney mixed media paper and tore out a page, trimmed off the raggedy edge, scored it down the middle, folded it in half to create a card. I then trimmed it down so it became a roughly 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch square card blank. I don't often make the card blanks out of mixed media paper. I like to conserve it by using it as panels on a card rather than a whole card blank. But I wanted to work directly on the card blank today, so the best thing really was to make my card blank from mixed media paper. Once I had my card blank ready, I stuck it to my glass mat using washi tape, and this had the effect of keeping it still while I worked on it, which is always really useful, but it also created a nice little white border all the way around the edge. I made sure the washi tape was pressed down really securely because I didn't want any liquid mediums to seep underneath it. I wanted a really crisp edge. To get going, I took Spun Sugar Distress Oxide, which is a very pale pink, and swiped the ink pad all over the paper. I then spritzed it with water to activate it, and then I took my smusher and smushed that water and ink all around. Dried it with my hairdryer, and that gave me a lovely soft pink background. I then took Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide, smushed it onto my mat, hydrated it with water, and then picked the ink up with my smusher and smushed it on to create an area of smushy, watercolory energy and movement. And on top of that, I did the same thing with saltwater taffy. So I've got 3 pinks here, all working together nicely. Once I'd given that a good dry, I then brought in some acrylic paint. Now this does go through a hot mess stage, but it does work out in the end, so you'll have to trust me on that and keep watching. On top of all my inky smushing, I did some acrylic painting. I like these Deco Art Crafters acrylics. They're really, really matte. There's no shine to them at all, which is something that I really appreciate in an acrylic paint. Your views may vary on that, and that's fine. But they're also pretty opaque for the most part, but you can water them down if you want them to be more translucent, so they're pretty good paint. They're not artist quality, but they're good enough. So I just grabbed some colours that I liked. I've got a teal, a minty green, a pale yellow, and I'm creating a circle of blendy acrylic colour, getting on some thick layers, but also having some translucent layers. And you do that simply by adjusting the amount of paint and the amount of water you have on your brush. Once I got my cool colours, my blue, my green, my yellow down, I decided to bring some warm colours to the foreground. So I added a pink circle and some orange blobs. And on top of that, I added some dark blue blobs. So I've got lots of pastel colours going on, but the dark blue adds a real pop of contrast, which starts to bring everything together and create some depth and some layers. I have been drying my layers, but I've cut that out of the video because that would be really tedious to watch. But after all my layers were dry, I just decided to use up the last few bits of paint from my palette and dry brush them on. I did have quite a bit of pink left, so I hydrated that with water to make it a bit runnier, picked it up with my smusher and smushed it on, and that started to bring all the layers together to make it seem like it was meant to be and less just like lots of layers of paint plonked on top of each other. I then put some yellow paint on my mat, hydrated that with water, picked it up with a paintbrush and spattered it on, and that brought in more energy, more movement, and continued to bring the layers together. As is often the case, I'd put too much paint on my palette, so I had plenty of yellow paint that I needed to use. So I grabbed my cake icing spreader stenciling tool, dipped it in the yellow paint and added some raggedy lines of paint coming in from the bottom and coming in from the top in 2 corners. I gave that a really good dry and then grabbed some stamps and some StazOn black ink. StazOn is great for this because it will stick to acrylic paint and dry really quickly, so you won't get any smearing of the ink. Ranger archival ink will do a similar job. So the stamps I grabbed were grungy mixed media stamps, and I got a grungy circle and stamped that in 3 places to create a visual triangle. Then I took a splat stamp and added that over each of the circles. And I wanted to bring some lightness and brightness to the front. So I took another grungy splatty stamp and stamped that in unicorn white pigment ink from Hero Arts. Now this does take a while to dry, so you have to be careful not to smudge it. After that, I spattered on some black metallic paint. This made those stamped splats look less stamped and more random. And because it's a metallic paint, it added shimmer and shine, and I don't think I've ever made a card in my life that hasn't got some form of shimmer and shine on it. Speaking of shimmer and shine, I wanted to bring in some gold because I love gold, and that pretty much appears on most of my cards as well. So I spattered that on and gave everything a really good dry before peeling off the washi tape and doing the reveal. And this is the point where you realise it's gone from a hot mess to something quite pleasing. It can be quite unnerving creatively to try and create something from scratch without frameworks like stencils or stamps or patterned paper. But really, it's just paint, it's just paper. Give it a go and see what you come up with. If you don't like it, you can pop it in your box of backgrounds and bits and come back to it later. So to finish my card, I wanted to add a sentiment, and I wanted to put that sentiment on something. I felt I needed to not mute down the background as such, but give my sentiment a chance to stand out. So I cut myself a square of vellum, and then I cut a white cardstock frame and adhered it to the vellum using 1mm deep foam tape. And then on the back of the vellum, underneath the frame, I added some liquid glue. I used a Zig 2-way glue pen because it's very accurate, but I also added a dot of high-tack white glue in the corners because I knew this would keep the vellum in place while the pen glue dried. For my sentiment, I chose a large happy birthday die, and I cut it from some gold foil paper that I bought back from Japan. I added high-tack white glue to the back of it using my glue dotter, and then I stuck that in the middle of the frame, in the middle of the whole card. And you know what's coming next, don't you? Yes, gold dots. So I cut some gold dots from the same gold foil paper using one of my cover plate dies. I added some dots of matte gel medium to my card in a diagonal going from the top left to the bottom right, and then put my gold dots on top. And that was this card done and dusted. I love the way it turned out. I'm really happy with it. I think all those weird disparate elements and layers work together really well in the end. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's inspired you to just get some things out and play with them and see what you can come up with. If it has, take a photo of whatever you come up with, whether you love it or you hate it, and come and share a photo in my Facebook group because I'd love to see it. Right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.